Inflation squeezes Americans as 61% say they live paycheck to paycheck, which, this is not a good thing, obviously. More than 6 in 10 Americans said they are living paycheck to paycheck as the rate of price increases remains stubbornly high, despite the Fed Reserve's battle to tame inflation, according to a study. The survey by Lending Club found that 61% of adults reported barely making ends meet in July, an increase from 59% compared to the same month last year. The survey dovetails with newly released data from the federal government Thursday, which showed that the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, a key inflation measure closely watched by the Fed, rose 0.2% from the previous month. Core prices, which strip out the more volatile measurements of food and energy, have risen 4.2% from the previous year. The report found that Americans were spending more to eat out at restaurants and go to live shows, as well as on toys, clothes, and prescription drugs. Ordering a dish that includes beef and veal was nearly 11% more expensive in July compared to the same period last year. Drinking a beer at a bar or a restaurant was nearly 4% more pricier last month compared to July of last year. The price of clothing and footwear went up by more than 2.4% in July, year over year, while clothing for kids jumped 5.4%. Americans have also been spending more on medicine, according to the latest government data, and the cost of pharmaceuticals soared in July by 3.4%, while the price of prescription drugs rose 2.8%. Americans have also been burdened with the rising cost of healthcare. A trip to the dentist or dental hygienist cost 5.3% more last month than it did last July, according to the data. The latest data come as the Fed weighs whether to again hike interest rates when it meets later this month. The central bankers are widely expected to leave the rate in the current range of 5.25% to 5.5% after increasing it 25 basis points in July. Earlier this month, the chief economist at Moody's Analytics reported that Americans are spending $709 more per month on everyday goods and services compared to just 2 years ago. The high inflation of the past 2+ years has done lots of economic damage, Mark Zandi tweeted following the release of the Consumer Price Index, a closely watched measure of inflation that tracks changes in the cost of everyday goods and services. The CPI rose moderately to 3.2% in July versus a year earlier. While inflation has fallen off its 4 decades high, it remains well above the Fed's 2% target rate. Due to the high inflation, the typical household spent $202 more in July than they did a year ago to buy the same goods and services, and they spent $709 more than they did 2 years ago, Zandi added. Americans are feeling the pinch at the pump as gas prices have climbed roughly 60 cents since the start of the year. The national average price of a gallon of regular gasoline stood at 3.82 as of Thursday, 9 cents higher than a month ago, and just 3 cents shy of last year's average, according to the American Automobile Association. At the start of the year, the average retail gas price stood at $3.33 and hit $3.98 last week before slightly dipping. Analysts predict that the upcoming hurricane season will likely disrupt production, while oil producing countries such as Saudi Arabia have indicated that they will cut supply, causing gas prices to spike even higher. This is not good. And here's the thing. Obviously, people are going to be facing pretty serious things due to this whole inflation. But what you got to do is you got to prioritize what really matters, right? If you're in a situation where you're basically living paycheck to paycheck, you have to cut your costs and somehow try to make more money. You don't really got a choice because all it takes is a slight emergency in that type of situation, and you are completely effed, right? You are bent over the table and being basically taken advantage of at that point because you are in a very bad position when you're in there, right? And the only ways to improve your situation if you're living paycheck to paycheck is to cut your cost and make more money, right? You have to do both. You technically could do just one of them, but you need to do both if you really want to be able to like escape that cycle of living paycheck to paycheck. So when it comes to food, you have to cut your cost, and one of the best ways to cut your cost when it comes to food is literally just getting like bottles of water, rice, beans, and ramen, right? That fulfills your caloric needs, a family's caloric needs, and also you add like a multivitamin in there just so that you don't get like scurvy or something, just to like bare minimum kind of stuff, because you'll be able to get the calories that you need to survive, and you can like make that food pretty darn quickly. Like it doesn't take much time at all to make any of those, and it allows you to basically put more focus and more money to things that really matter, right? Because when it comes down to it, it's amazing how much money people actually spend on food. Like, I don't think people really understand how much money people spend on food. Like, it's not uncommon that the average person goes and gets like fast food at least twice a day, right? On top of like getting groceries and snacks and whatnot, right? So that's easily just minimum $20 a day that you're pretty much spending on junk food, right? That eats up a lot of your budget. Like $20 a day, 5 days a week. If you're working 5 days, like 40 hours, right? That's a lot. $100 a week, so $400 a month that you're spending on basically fast food, not including groceries, not including actually going out to like a restaurant or a bar or something like that, not doing anything fun. It's like that's just purely like fast food type of stuff, right? So you got to be very careful and be very aware where your money is actually going. Like the biggest problem when it comes to like people living paycheck to paycheck is that one, it can happen at any income. Two, it's usually not due to their low income, it's usually due to their spending habits. And they just literally have no idea where their money is going. So if you are in this type of situation and you're living paycheck to paycheck, one of the best recommendations that I could probably give for anyone is to like write down every time you spent money and on what day. So just like keep like a little like diary log, and you could just basically be like, okay, Monday, this date, I spent $10 going out to fast food. I spent $5 getting this. I spent $4 getting this, right? And you actually like explain what you spent your money on. And by the end of the month, and you actually like look back at it, you're like, holy crap! I spent like $300 on worthless nonsense that I don't even remember getting. Like that is just crazy. So it's just something to make yourself more aware. Because like when it comes to like finances and getting a little bit better at finances, the biggest issue is that people just have no clue what they are actually spending their money on because they just don't pay attention.